Today I'm excited to be joined by Anna Haraj, content strategist at Convince and Convert. First though, we'll start with a little bit of housekeeping. I'm Cassandra Theocharis, Acquia's Senior Marketing Specialist, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. So as usual, today's webinar is being recorded and we will be sending attendees a link to the recording within the next couple of days. And Anna, at the end of her presentation, will be taking questions for about 5 to 10 minutes. So please submit any questions you may have within the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to them at the end of her presentation. Now, if you don't know much about Acquia, I'll give you a very quick introduction to who we are and what we do. So Acquia is the open source digital experience company, and we provide the world's most ambitious brands with technology that allows them to embrace innovation and create customer moments that matter. At Acquia, we believe in the power of community and giving our customers the freedom to build tomorrow on their own terms. On that note, I'd like to introduce again today's speaker. I'm super excited to be joined by Anna, who's a content strategist at Convince and Convert. And Anna is a speaker and marketing strategist, as well as a content expert who tackles her clients' toughest marketing problems with fearless and tenacity. She was also named one of the 50 most influential women in content marketing as of 2017. So with that introduction done, I'd like to hand the mic over for Anna to begin.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Cassandra. And thank you everybody for joining today. I am so excited to walk you through the winning formula for exceptional content. So thank you for being here today. When we talk about content, we have a tendency to talk a lot about creativity. And when we talk about content creation, we have this tendency to also think of it as this highly intuitive, very creative process where a writer just sits down at their desk, opens up a Word document, and words magically pour onto the page. And within this highly creative, natural process, we think of things happening like sparks of inspiration, right? Where writers just sort of sit back and wait, and then all of a sudden a content vision hits them and they translate it onto the page. Or what happens is we think about right brain and left brain thinking. So of course, left brain thinking being much more math and science oriented. And then of course, right brain thinking being much more art and language association. And so we have a tendency to label people left brain or right brain thinkers when this might not be true at all. And then of course, we have a tendency to label people as just highly creative, right? So they're just creative, they know what to create and when to create it, so everything will be fine. They know what they're doing, no problem. But what actually may happen is when you tell even your best writer to go create content without giving them any frameworks or without giving them any sort of requirements, here's what happens. Nothing. At least nothing good. That's because you can't create exceptional content out of nothing. Now, this happens all the time, though. We have content that needs to be created. We know that we need to be creating content. We have writers who are ready to create content, but we don't always know what we're going to be creating or why. Now, if this scenario is starting to sound a little bit too familiar to you, it's okay. Don't feel bad, because what's actually happening is that's the norm, not the exception. And this has been proven time and time again by Content Marketing Institute's annual Benchmarks, Budgets, and Trends report. Now, the numbers that we're going to be looking at today are for B2B content marketing for North America. Now, if you're not in B2B and you're not in North America, which many of you are not today, it's okay, because Content Marketing Institute has actually done this survey in different verticals, in different countries, in different sectors. So I highly encourage you to go find the report that best suits you. But just know that all the reports are fairly similar, and the numbers that we're going today are still fairly accurate. They might be slightly different, but they're still very much representative of what's happening today. So what is happening today? Well, Of those organizations polled, 67% said that they were extremely or very committed to content marketing. Okay, we're on a great path so far. Fantastic. We are doing content marketing, and not only that, we are very committed. We're on a good path. Furthermore, 50% of those organizations said that they plan to increase their content budgets over the next 12 months. All right, so good. So we're committed, and we are now doing even more of it by investing in it even more. Unfortunately, things start to take a bit of a turn when polled on the effectiveness of content. Only 4% rated their efforts as extremely successful. That's not a very large number, and that's pretty concerning, especially with how many of us are actually doing content and creating content on a daily basis. It gets even a little bit more concerning when you consider that only 39% have a documented strategy. So essentially what you're going to find in these reports is that we are doing content marketing. We are committing to it. More and more of us are committing to it more than ever before. We are putting more money into it. We're not exactly sure if it's working, and we don't really have a plan at all. What this ends up creating is a sea of sameness. We end up creating the same blog posts, the same social posts, and the same campaigns over and over and over again. As Jay Baer says, it's time to stop random acts of content. Random acts of content waste time, money, and resources we can't afford to waste any longer. And the way that we stop random acts of content is with the winning formula for exceptional content. Now, this formula that I'm about to give you is extremely easy. It is 3 parts, and it's fantastic because of how simple it is. The formula for exceptional content is business goals, user needs, and exactly where they meet in the middle. That middle piece where they overlap is where we get exceptional content. Now, some of you may have seen this before. I wish I could take credit for making it up, but I certainly didn't. I first saw this formula when I was working in the content strategy and user experience communities, and even there's different forms of it around today. For example, Garrett Moon's most recently released book, The 10X Marketing Formula, has something very similar to this, only he calls that middle the content core. Today, we're going to call it exceptional content. And the balance between these two is absolutely critical for success. That's what we want to focus on, is that middle piece and creating content from that section. Now, what happens when we stray too far in either direction, content gets a little weird. So, for example, if we go too far to the left and we just create content based on our business goals, things start to sound like a brochure, and there's really no value for our audiences. We're just pushing information on people that they might not even want or need. When we create content from this perspective alone, it sounds like a very pushy salesperson trying to get you to buy something that you had no intention of buying in the first place, and nobody wants that. However, on the other side, if we just create content for our audience needs, well, there's really no value in it for us either, is there? And not only that, but users come to us looking for a question to be answered. And if we don't have those next steps, if we don't have that answer, there's no reason for them to come to us at all. There's no connection to our brand. So they can just go get that information anywhere. There's really no value for us either. That balance is absolutely critical. That balance is what truly creative content is. That's where content performs. Again, going back to that 4% of those who said that they felt their efforts were extremely successful. This is where content can be successful. And it's exceptional content, most importantly. That balance is absolutely critical because it creates a win-win for everyone. Now, letting you in on another secret, this has actually been around forever, whether brands realize it or not, but people have actually been creating content from this perspective for quite some time. The first example that I can think of is from the Furrow magazine from John Deere, dating back all the way to 1895. Now, many of you out there have seen this example over and over again. It is probably one of the most commonly cited examples of content marketing out there, but it is very valid, and especially when you consider the balance between business goals and audience needs. The reason why this worked is because even though John Deere created this from their perspective, they actually included information that their audience needed and wanted. So for example, they had agricultural tips. So they would see an ad for John Deere tractors, but then immediately get an article about agricultural tips and tricks. They actually personalized this publication. It's tailored to 17 different regions because growing in one area and farming in another are totally different. So they actually customized it to the region they were sending it to. In addition, they had a highly consistent cadence. It was a quarterly magazine, and so people actually knew about when to expect it in the mail. And not only that, it was real and it was authentic. It spoke to what it was really like living a rural farmer lifestyle at that time. And it actually still continues today, and it is still wildly popular. Jumping forward 90 years, let's talk about Nintendo Power. Growing up in the late 80s and early 90s as a child in North America, many of us probably didn't even realize that we were holding on to a marvelous piece of content marketing. Now, Nintendo Power magazine, in case you're not aware of it or you didn't receive it, was essentially a magazine that was created by Nintendo, but it featured all sorts of tips and tricks, and it was basically like playing Nintendo. It was your field guide, and it was wonderful because at that time, it worked because there was no Google. If you got stuck on a level of Super Mario Brothers, you were stuck until Nintendo Power came along. They gave you hints and tricks and cheat codes. You could get all sorts of information from there that you didn't get because there was no internet at the time. In addition, it was highly entertaining. There were things like comics and articles that were definitely video game related, but they were entertaining and they were meant for the audience. In addition, it was real. It was edited by actual Nintendo fans. So it was created by Nintendo, but edited by Nintendo fans for other Nintendo fans. And then finally, it evolved over the years. So they tried new approaches, they updated the format on occasion, and unfortunately, the magazine ceased publication in 2012, but they actually evolved it again. Nintendo Power is back as a podcast. And then finally, bringing it into present day, we have Acquia resources. So again, another example of balancing business goals and user needs. If you go to the Acquia resources section, there is so much value in this content. Even though it's created by Acquia, there's so much there for the audiences and for our own needs. It really helps readers level up. In addition, it's relevant. It's tailored to their readers' interests. It's tailored to their customers' interests. It's also incredibly helpful. So there's all sorts of different formats and options for you to look through. There's webinars, there's blogs, there's articles, there's tips, there's tricks. There's all sorts of information for every type of learning style. And then finally, it's relatable. You can also even see real stories from real people. You can get different perspectives, and it's actually information that you can use and need. So we have the formula for exceptional content. Now we just need to create it. And that's what we're going to spend the rest of our time talking about today, is how to actually make that Venn diagram, the balance between business goals and user needs, come to life. And we're going to do that in 4 steps today. Now, with each step that we review, I'm going to walk you through the process. And then at the end of each step, there's going to be a very quick, very simple exercise that you can actually do right away. So those 4 steps are: 1, identifying your business goals. 2, understanding our audience needs. 3, doing more, creating more by doing less. And that's actually where we're going to combine the business goals and user needs. And then 4, hiring the right writers. Because of course, we can plan and strategize all day long, but we eventually have to execute that content too. So we definitely don't want to leave out the people side of things. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. Section 1 is going to be identifying our business goals. Now, when we talk about our business goals, we have a tendency to think of them as hard KPIs, right? So when you think of your business goals, you might think about increasing sales or driving more leads, maybe getting more return purchases, increasing user registrations, or even upselling products and packages. When it comes to content goals for our business, we need to shift our thinking a little bit and start thinking about why we're creating content and less about the output of what we want to get out of content. So for content business goals, we should be thinking more about the purpose of content and how it achieves our goals. So for example, maybe we are creating content to engage audiences in more meaningful ways. Or maybe we want to be a go-to resource for our customers. Or maybe even we want to showcase our dedication to improving our customers' lives with a better product. So again, less hard KPIs and more how we're going to achieve that with content. At the end of the day, we need to focus our business goals for our content around the why we're creating content in the first place, not just what we hope to achieve. So again, great business goals for your content would be building trust by showing our commitment and transparency to ethical business practices, or even becoming a go-to customer resource for them to easily troubleshoot either implementation issues or migration issues. Those are great business goals that we want to make sure we keep in mind. On the flip side, so not so great business goals would be driving more qualified leads into the top of the funnel or increasing return of visits to drive incremental sales. Again, we want to make sure that we're focusing not just on the hard number, but how content is going to help us achieve that. The easiest and quickest way to get to our business content goals is to simply ask why. I first learned the power of asking why with Content Strategy for the Web. In this book, it really was a simple paragraph, but it got me to stop and think about how powerful that question is and how it really just takes that one simple question to get people to take a step back, pause, and really reflect on why we're doing something the way we're doing it or why we're doing something in the first place. In addition, many of you may be very familiar with Simon Sinek and his entire philosophy around Start With Why. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, his entire principle of Start With Why is really just boiling down to the fact that customers don't care what you do or how you do it. They care why you do it. They want to understand the purpose behind what you do. And that's exactly what our business content goals should be as well. Now, when I often start working with new clients or I start looking at why people are creating content in the first place, I ask them why. And what I typically get back in response is, well, we need to create content to show our competitive advantage. Okay, that is a very valid reason, but again, that's not something that's really tangible. That's not really getting to the why. So I ask them, why again? Why do you need to show your competitive advantage? And they typically respond with something like, well, because our competitors are outperforming us. Okay, well, let's try it again. Why? Why are your competitors outperforming you? Well, because they have better brand recognition, but we can actually walk the walk. Okay, that is so much better. We're getting more tangible. We're getting to the why. Instead of just saying, well, our competitors are beating us, so we have to play follow the leader, we're getting down into why we actually can create content from a unique perspective. We're getting to that why. And so that actually leads us to our first exercise, which is the 5 whys. Now, the 5 whys is one of my absolutely favorite exercises to do because it is so simple, it is so quick, and all it requires is a pen and a piece of paper. I'm going to walk you through it right now, and it really doesn't take any time at all. Now, this isn't a substitute for a full-fledged strategy, but it will at least get you to a better place and give you some more tangible business objectives. So, what you want to do is grab a piece of paper, and at the very top, write a statement such as, we need to do content marketing. You are then going to proceed to ask why 5 times. And each time you're going to answer the question before. So here's how it might go. We need to do content marketing. Okay. Why? Well, our competitors are outperforming us. Okay. Why? Well, they have good marketing, but we walk the walk. Okay. Why? Well, we actually have the latest and greatest technology. Okay, we're getting better. For why? Well, our culture is built on innovation. Okay. Why? Because we genuinely care about making the world better. Now that is so much more tangible and so much more attainable than just we need to do content marketing. Right here and now, you at least have the fact that you want to genuinely make the world a better place, you have a culture built on innovation, and you actually have the latest and greatest technology. Those are things that we can write about, and those are things that we can base our business goals and objectives on. And it is so much closer than just, we need to do content marketing. So that's how you very quickly find your business objectives. Moving to the other side of that Venn diagram, let's check out our audience's needs. Jay Baer also says, relevancy magically creates time and attention. However, in order to be relevant, you need to understand your audiences first. So, every customer has different needs. And even within our own customer set, we have different segments and different types of customers. So we can't always just lump them into one generalized category. What we really need to do is take a look at each unique segment within our customer base. As an example of this, let's look at Sydney Football Club. So, for example, these are just a few of their audience segments, but certainly not all of them. But even just at a glance, you can see how different they are and even just how many different needs they might have along the way. So, for example, we have some casual fans, and these might be those who are looking for a last-minute ticket, or maybe they just bought a one-time ticket for a special event, or maybe they got a free ticket because somebody they know couldn't go to the match. But then again, you have your diehard fans. You have those who are membership holders and go to every single game. Maybe you have those who just go to home games, or maybe you have fans that actually travel to see the teams in other locations. And then, of course, you have your players and your officials. Let's never forget about our internal audiences as well. So with our players, you have everybody from rookies to seasoned players to injured players to the A-League to the W-League. And then, of course, the officials. You have coaches, you have referees. They have much different needs, and they are a much different segment than players. Even at each additional stage, they have different needs at different times. Let's take, for example, that last-minute ticket holder, that casual fan that we just looked at. Maybe in the awareness stage, they are saying something like, where do I get tickets? Right? They're looking around. They don't know because they're a casual fan, and they're just looking for a last-minute ticket. Maybe then in consideration, they say, well, where should I sit and how much do I actually want to spend? Do I want to sit up further and pay more? Or do I want to sit back? Just depends. Within the purchase phase, maybe they say, I want these seats. I know I want them. Now, how do I get them? And then finally, in the advocacy phase, I had a great time. When is the next match? And also never forget that even though we have customer segments and people might fit into them, they can change segments at any time. Perhaps this last-minute ticket holder had such an amazing time that they then become a membership holder. So don't always assume that they're in that one position forever. They can move around and change, certainly. Now, in order to better understand our audiences, there's a few things that we can do, and it revolves around getting data. Specifically, qualitative inputs plus quantitative data. And we absolutely need this blend in order to get the full picture. Either one of them alone is going to give us an incomplete picture. So when it comes to qualitative inputs, we want to start looking at things like customer interviews and focus groups and personas, if you have them, maybe some empathy mapping, which we're going to go over today. And then customer journey maps, which are, of course, a little bit more fleshed out from personas, and they take you through their actual journey. Even database surveys. You could run a quick survey to get some qualitative feedback, and that would be a fantastic source of qualitative input. On the other side, we have quantitative data. So website analytics reviews, social measurement, demographic information, third-party research, and this is by no means an exhaustive list. There are sometimes even government organizations or research organizations that publish data for free, and you might even be able to use it depending on who your audiences are and what your industry is. Now, for those of us who don't have a lot of time or resources or budget, I want to walk you through my absolute favorite sources of data that you can use and you probably have handy today. First, social listening. It is a tried and true favorite, but you actually get to hear what customers are saying on your social channels and on their own social channels, and you actually get a sense for what they care about. And even beyond just sentiment analysis, you actually can look around hashtags, you can look at adjacent industries, you can look at adjacent topics, and just really get an idea for what they're saying, what they're thinking, and what they're feeling. Organic search is wonderful to look at tool. There's always the Google Keyword Planner, which many of you are probably familiar with. And this really gives you a chance to see what customers are looking for initially. It's their starting off point. It's exactly what they're hoping to get before they ever even get to you. In addition, we have on-site search. On-site search has to be my hands down absolute favorite source of gathering data and information, because customers, especially if you have it available on your site, are coming to your site and entering in exactly what they're looking for in their own language. So even looking at how your users have different sets of vernacular, or maybe they're calling something one thing, but we're calling it another, it can really help you spot some user experience issues as well, but it's also just a fantastic source of direct audience data. And then of course, last but not least, having a real discussion. It's amazing how we just don't have a lot of discussions with our customers. Now, sometimes this is, of course, due to legal restrictions, or perhaps we just don't have that data. But having a discussion, there's really nothing that can replace it. And we really should be hearing what our customers are saying, because they drop hints about what they want all the time. And we can always help satisfy their needs through content, especially when they tell us directly through a conversation. So that brings us to exceptional content exercise number 2, which is empathy mapping. In order to really get to know our audiences, we have to take all this data and we actually have to contextualize it and humanize it. And so we need to start to think like them, and we can do that through empathy mapping. Now, this is another exercise where really you just want to get a piece of paper and draw these quadrants on there. So go ahead and draw a little smiley face in the middle, and then you're going to go around from the top left. We're going to go what they're seeing. We are going to then assume what they're thinking and feeling, what they're doing and saying, what they're hearing, and then at the bottom, we want to make sure that we're also touching on their pains and their gains. So their pains, what obstacles or challenges are they facing, and their gains. What do they actually have to gain from the outcome? So for example, going back to that Sydney FC example about the last minute ticket holder, that casual fan, let's say that his name is Mike, he's 42 and he lives in Sydney. So maybe some of the things that he's seeing are advertisements for the match. He's seeing the latest team standings and rankings, and he's also seeing his friends making plans to go to the match. As far as thinking and feeling, he's saying, well, there's really nothing happening this weekend, so I wonder if there's still tickets for the match. As far as what he's doing and saying, maybe he's saying, I don't really want to spend a ton of money on a ticket. I still want to go. So he's looking at the ticketing website to see what the prices are and what's still available. He's also hearing that his friends are going and that they want to meet up either before or after. And he's also hearing that the match might be sold out. So he might be getting a little bit nervous even. In terms of his pains, he's probably frustrated with the ticket options and the ticketing system if he's not familiar with it. And then for his gains, what he has to gain from the outcome is he's going to get a ticket and have a great time. So again, empathy mapping, really quick, really easy, just filling out each quadrant based on what we know about them from the data we've collected. So once we have this all filled out, what we want to do is take a step back and we want to observe what are the key themes that we're seeing. What do they need from us? What do they want, which are sometimes two different things? And what is their ultimate goal? And that is how you find your audience needs. Now, it's time to put them together. And we do that by creating more with less. Now, in this section, we have a couple of different components. The first one is going back to that exceptional content. We want to find that overlap between business goals and audience needs. And we're going to do that with an example from Starbucks. So let's use Starbucks here, even though we've been using Sydney FC for a little bit, just to change it up and give you an example of how a different company might do this approach as well. So when it comes to business goals and audience needs, maybe Starbucks took a look at their business goals and they came to the conclusion with the 5 whys that they would want to showcase their dedication to sustainability and ethics. They want to make coffee culture much more approachable than it is today. And they want to showcase employees and community impact, right? So they did some strategy work. They did the 5 whys. They got their business objectives for their content going, and this is potentially what they came up with. Now, on the flip side, maybe they took a look at their audiences, and through all of their data crunching, they realized that audiences really just want to try the latest drink craze. Maybe they want to try the latest unicorn frappuccino. Maybe they want to try the latest sakura blossom frappuccino. Who knows? Maybe they just are really into doing everything for Instagram. They love those crazy drinks and they love trying new things. Maybe their audiences also really just want to see how to get rewarded for drinking at Starbucks. They're very into the loyalty program. They're very loyal to Starbucks, and they feel that they should be rewarded. In addition, maybe their audiences also care very much about ordering online and convenience. And they're really concerned with just finding their favorite drink and getting it their way. So they want their non-fat, no foam latte with 17 shots and non-fat vanilla syrup. So they really care about customizing their drink and making it their way. Now, what we could assume from the overlap of these two is our exceptional content should be based around connecting with coffee as a lifestyle content and showcasing coffee options and customizability. So again, really blending those business goals and those audience needs into something that meets in the middle. So connecting with coffee as a lifestyle content and showcasing coffee options and customizability. We can see how those two sides blended to get the final result. Now, once we find our exceptional content and what we need to be creating content from, we don't actually want to go out and create a ton of content. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but what we actually want to do is repurpose, reuse, and remix content first, because chances are you have tons of content that's already been created, and we don't want that to go to waste. Instead, what we want to do is leverage existing content as much as possible. And we do that first by taking an inventory of what we have and then realigning content to be exceptional if possible. So there could be some blog posts that maybe need minor edits. Maybe there are some articles that just need a couple of lightweight lifting. And then maybe there are some infographics that just need to be tweaked slightly to have a different message at the end. We really want to make sure that we use the content that we have first instead of just creating more. In addition, we want to make sure that anything that can't be exceptional doesn't make the final cut. So we want to make sure we start a sunset strategy for that by getting our 301 redirects in place and then getting rid of anything that doesn't meet our exceptional content criteria. Finally, what we want to do with our content, any existing content and any new content that we create, is we want to make sure we atomize that content for greater reach and better return on investment. Now, fun fact, which is a not so fun fact for us, which is that 80% of our online time is spent on 15 sites or less. I bet you could probably count all of the websites you visit on a day on one hand. It's getting smaller as we continue on, but typically 80% of our online time is spent on 15 sites or less. So what we have to do then is become digital dandelions. Instead of relying on our content to be found by having users come to our website, we need to make sure that we are atomizing our content and sharing it out where our customers already are. And we do that by becoming digital dandelions. We plant our content on site and then we share it out off-site. So content lives on our site. It's where we can plant really big pieces of content. They can live there. They get great organic search optimization, and we can be found if people are looking for us. But then we also go to where our customers actually are with offsite content. So we actually share our content out where people already are. Now, what atomization actually looks like is leveraging the 1-to-8 rule. The 1-to-8 rule is that for every piece of large on-site content, we create 8 smaller pieces of off-site content. So Large pieces of content tend to look like white papers, studies, marketing campaigns, podcasts, videos, ebooks, big pieces of content that take a lot of time and a lot of effort to produce. Smaller pieces of content can look like anything from infographics to social posts to slideshare presentations to personal emails even, or even SMS messages. So again, these are a little bit more lightweight, they're very easily shareable, and these are smaller content examples. So what we do as an example for that 1 to 8 atomization, again, taking a big piece of content and creating 8 smaller shareable pieces of content, is this example here. So let's say that we have a podcast. What we could then do with that podcast is maybe select a tiny audio clip and share it out as a social post. We could create a LinkedIn social post with a designed pull quote from that recording. We could maybe pull a section of that audio and then create a very lightweight animated video, something very quick as like a teaser for the podcast. We could write a recap article about top 10 takeaways from that episode so people can skim it and then listen to it on their own time. We could do a LinkedIn blog post about a summary. We could do an infographic with the summary and share that out on Twitter or Facebook. If we're in sales, or even if we have clients, we could take a personal email, summarize it into bullet points, and then share it that way. Or we could even do a retargeting campaign based on those who listened, and target them with different options for other podcasts they might enjoy. So again, the 1 to 8 content atomization example. So now that we know how to create more with less, it's time to actually go on to exceptional content exercise number 3, which is finding the content that matters, our exceptional content. So just like we looked at for that Starbucks example, all you're going to do for this exercise is take the output from exercise 1 and find your business goals and write them to the left of your Venn diagram. You are then going to take the output from exercise 2, which is your audience needs. Again, those themes from the empathy map that we walked through, and you're going to write them on the right side of the Venn diagram. Then what you're going to do is look at the 2 sides and then figure out what content is the overlap in the middle. That is your exceptional content, and that is where all content should be created from. So now you have everything you need to create exceptional content, with the exception of execution. So let's talk a little bit about hiring the right writers. Now, as I mentioned before at the top of our webinar, planning content is one thing. Actually, creating content is entirely different. We can plan all day long, but if we don't execute it properly, all of our planning efforts might be for naught. And one of the biggest content fails that we could possibly have, aside from not having a content plan to begin with, is not hiring the right people. Now, this is a really tricky topic because there are really 2 sides to hiring. There's aptitude, so the actual skills that we have and our ability to do the job, and our attitude. And really, there's 2 sides to this. So let's go ahead and talk through aptitude first, because that is actually, funny enough, the least complex part of this. And anybody who is a hiring manager out there or who manages people, I think you know what I'm talking about. So aptitude. We have this tendency within the content community to treat a content creator like another content creator, like another content creator. We see them kind of as universally interchangeable. So if we were to give all 3 of these examples here a press release, we expect them all to be able to write it. If we were to give them some social posts, we would expect all 3 of them to be able to write it. When in actuality, a content creator isn't a content creator, isn't a content creator. Different backgrounds bring different skill sets to the table. So for example, a traditional copywriter might not have a lot of that technical SEO background like our SEO content creator. Or maybe our journalist really just loves to tell the story, but they don't quite know how to connect it back to the brand, and they don't quite know how to connect it to the user needs. And then, of course, maybe our SEO content creator loves the technical side, but they don't really love the creative copywriting side. They really want to work on the back-end systems. They want to work on that metadata, and they don't really want to do all that creative copywriting, right? So different skill sets, different backgrounds, they bring different things to the table. And so we need to treat our content marketing the same way. A content marketer isn't a content marketer, isn't a content marketer. We need to make sure that if we are doing social media content marketing, that we have a social media copywriter. If we are doing paid media, we have a paid media writer. If we're doing email content, we have someone that writes emails and specializes in that, or that somebody is well versed enough in those topics to execute them well. Now, we also want to make sure that the content creator matches the content, so making sure that we are aligning properly. The other thing that we want to make sure we're doing is we don't create positions that require superhumans, because again, we want to make sure that we are tailoring the content to the content creator for the best results. So we don't want to just put out a job post for a blanket digital content creator, but then expect them to do digital writing and brand copywriting, and content strategy, and maybe also some editing and some proofreading, and then also analyzing the results of all of the things that they wrote and then posted, but then also maybe designing the graphics, and then also producing a video, and then also going out and shooting a photo shoot. We can't keep doing that and expecting our content creators to do all of the content creation. We want to make sure, again, that we are setting them up for success, which in turn will set our content up for success. Now, that doesn't mean that content creators don't have multiple different skill sets, but at most, the average person can maybe do 2 to 3 of these things exceptionally well. So again, we just want to make sure we tailor the writing and the content to the creator. We also always want to bring a mix of talent and skill sets together. So instead of overloading everybody, we want to make sure we bring the right skill sets to the table, because everybody has something different to contribute and everybody can learn from one another. And this is actually what's going to make our content better, is when we have these different perspectives and we have these different experts working on it, and everybody can get a 360 view of what our content is doing and how it could work and perform. All right, so let's move on to the trickier side, which is attitude. This one is a little bit stickier. And so we're just going to touch on it a little bit, because what you really need to recognize is that attitudes are much harder to change than aptitude. I would much rather hire someone with a fantastic attitude who is willing to put in the work and willing to do their job and willing to learn the skills that they need to have and have the passion behind it, than the expert who doesn't want to do anything or doesn't want to work with the team. Because we need to address these issues head on, because that creates just as many problems as those who don't quite have the aptitude to do their job. So we need to address these attitude issues head on and make sure that we are ready to make hard decisions, whether it be a realignment of team structures or maybe just, unfortunately, not great news and having to restructure teams and realign people within the department. But attitude is incredibly important when it comes to hiring the right people. So that being said, we have exceptional content exercise number 4, which is our core content culture checklist. Now, this one is very, very easy. It's actually the easiest of the bunch. And all you need to do is go down the list and answer yes. The more yeses you have, the better it is. So, have you provided the following to your content teams or your content marketing teams? First, clear content vision and strategic frameworks. Second, time to collaborate and innovate. Third, the feeling of being in the right position for their skill set. Fourth, the freedom to take risks and try new things. Fifth, ways to share ideas, feedback, and concerns. 6, a trusted environment in which they can fail fast and learn quickly. And then 7th, ongoing education and opportunities to grow. So again, the more yeses, the better. The more yeses means we're providing our content creators everything that they need to successfully execute the content that we have so diligently planned and put all of our hard work into. So just to recap, now that we're at the end, the winning formula for exceptional content. There's 4 steps to get there. So to get to our business goals and our user needs, we need to first identify our business goals with the 5 whys. The second is understand your audience needs by pulling qualitative and quantitative data and doing some empathy mapping. The third is create more by doing less, by finding out where your exceptional content is with that overlap, remixing and reusing content, and atomizing content. And then the fourth is hiring the right people for the right content. So that being said, happy content planning and happy content creation. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Anna. That was a really great presentation. So I'll ask everyone now, we're going to head into a Q&A session with Anna. So if you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A tab. I've got a couple already, so we'll start with our first question. We have a question from Pramila. Should content marketers be then on the table with sales while they meet customers face-to-face for listening to real discussions and gathering needs?
Yes, if you can, at the very minimum, asking salespeople for that feedback or getting transcripts will do if you can't actually be there. But yeah, even just sitting in on some of those customer conversations can reveal an entire world of feedback that you never ordinarily would have access to. Absolutely great question.
And we have another one here from Giraffe. What is the biggest reason, according to you, why execution of content strategy fails?
I would actually say it would be the disconnect between strategy and execution. So going back to hiring the right people who can actually see that vision, see that strategic framework, and put it into place. So again, going back and making sure that if we have, social media strategy, that we actually have social media writers, and if we are doing more on-site stuff, that we have on-site writers and people who really understand how to take that strategy and execute it properly.
Cool. And we have another question from Raylene. Can you explain what Google Keyword Planner is?
Yes, so Google Keyword Planner is a tool that they offer for free where you can actually go in and look at search terms, and it will pull back some of the most commonly searched terms. It's a lot of time used for actually paid media, but you can get a really good sense of what people are searching for and just sort of the volume in which they're searching. So it's actually a free tool. If you Google Keyword Planner, you should be able to get it.
And we have another question here from John. How should we be measuring content to make sure it's the right content?
Perfect. So in order to measure content to make sure it's the right content, you absolutely want to measure it based on where your exceptional content is and that overlap between business goals and user needs. And then also making sure you are still aligning it back to your KPIs. So we don't necessarily want to ignore all of our KPIs. It's just that we don't want to create content straight from them. So always having it in the back of your mind about what content is doing and how it's actually helping you achieve those KPIs is definitely the best way to go.
And one last question here from Kate. Who should be leading the content efforts for my company?
So when leading the content efforts for your company, that's actually a tricky one because a lot of people wear the content hat. I mean, content is created across organizations now. It's not just one department. It's not just one person. There's no official owner for content. So ideally, it would be somebody in a designated content position. If not, it would be best to have sort of everybody who's representative of that content department or the department where content is coming from, come to the table and lead the charge together. So typically it's going to be, the director of marketing or, director of content marketing. But if not, you can always create a sort of, I don't want to say committee because content by committee is never a great thing, but you can you can create a team where people come together to create content that's more holistic.
Awesome. Looks like we're out of questions. I'd just like to thank everyone for attending today and for your wonderful questions. And thank you again, Anna, for such a great presentation. I'll just do a quick reminder and say that please keep an eye out within the next couple of days on your email, and you should receive the recording from us and also the slides. Thanks again for joining us, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you on one of our next upcoming webinars. And please enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again, Anna.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.